Hey everybody, welcome. So in this series here, what we're going to be doing is setting up a small Flask app using the code that we generated in the last tutorial where we were able to use the command line to check passwords. So what I wanted to do is make it so we could actually use a web interface and have a website where we could do the same exact thing. And I thought Flask would be a great place to start because it's a small framework, pretty straight to set up. It'll do exactly what we need it to do to supply our users or potential users the ability to do what we need. So let's get started. So I'm here at their homepage and I'm just going to roll down. We've got all this stuff already done pretty much from our last setup, right? We've got a virtual environment, everything's good to go. The only thing we have to do now is do this pip install Flask. So we'll go over to our editor here, and I've got my virtual environment running already, and I'm just going to paste in that command. So pip install Flask, and it's with a capital F. So let's run that, and we have a problem. All right, what I'm going to have to do, I'll do this on camera here. You can skip ahead if you want. I'm going to delete this virtual environment and create a new one. So I'll deactivate, and then I'm just going to use the built-in functionality here in Visual Studio. So create environment. Yes. Yes. Just take a second. All right. So if I open a terminal now, let's see. Yeah, it bumps me back in to this new environment that I just created. We've got this this requirements from our last app where we installed the request library. So I'm going to install that here now. So to do that, all I have to do is say pip install -r and then requirements.txt. All right, it says already satisfied. So I think when we set this up, it set all this up when I created this new environment. It ran through and installed everything. All right, so now what I need to do is do that pip install Flask again. So I'll just paste that back in there and see if this works this time. There we go. All right, cool. So we got that installed. Now what we can do, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this Flask app. And then inside of Flask app, I'm going to make a new file. And I'm going to call this Flask _server.py. And you can call this file whatever you want, but just don't call it, I guess you can't call it whatever you want. Don't call it like flask.py. That'll potentially cause problems. So something like Flask server, something, descriptive like that, and we should be good to go. So we'll head back over here to the installation, roll up, and then what do we got here? Installation, quick start. There we go. And this is all we got to do right here. Well, not all, but we got to, just to get something running here. So paste that in. We're going to go back here, and then we can run this command to run a server. And how do you do a debug here? Let's run debug mode. Here we go. Which is what we want. Because if we have problems, it'll show us. So this is the command here. So ours is going to be the Flask server file. So what we're going to have to do now, let me clear the screen, and we're going to cd into that folder. So Flask app, And then I'm going to paste in that command, but then we want to change this hello to Flask server. And if we run that, we should be able to click this, control, and then click it. There we go. It's up here. Hello world. All right, cool. I want to show you here. So that hello world that we're getting when we look at the web page, it's coming right here, right? They put it in a p tag, and you can see the paragraph tags there, and then it just says hello world. So we could change this to like an h1, for example, h1, and then h1, and then if we go back and refresh, look at that. So that's the idea, but we don't want to be doing that. I mean, it's cool for a little hello world or whatever, but if you've got a bunch of stuff, right, that's crazy. You don't want to type it all in here. You want a separate template. So Flask gives us the option to have that template, and we have to import it, and then we have to build it, but we can just come up there. So after we import Flask, throw in a comma and say render template, like that. And then down here, instead of rendering a template, or instead of rendering this H1, we're going to render the template. So we're going to say return, and then render template, and then the name of the template, which we haven't built yet, but we're going to. And this render template function takes arguments, right? So it's a method. So we got to put in our parentheses, and we're going to, I don't know, let's call it index. So put in a pair of quotes, and we'll say index.html. This is going to be the name of our HTML file. All right, so it's still not going to work. Like right now, if we refresh this, we've got a broken deal, right? We've got our, because we're running a debug, we can see it's saying not found, template not found index. So let's go back, and the way Flask works, this is all in their documentation. So if you read through this stuff, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about here, but I'll just show you instead of reading all this stuff. We need to create a folder inside our Flask app folder called templates, and that's where it's going to look for these templates. So inside here, new folder, templates. This is very similar, by the way, to Django. In a sense, this is much lighter weight, less files, pretty easy to set up, but I do use Django quite a bit, and so it's the same thing. And then we're going to go in here, and we're going to create a new file and say index.html. And in here, I'm just going to do this here temporarily to show you. In the Visual Studio Code editor, if you type in HTML, just like that, you can see we get these choices. And I'm going to just grab HTML5, and look at that, we get a web page. So if I come into the body here, and I put a H1 tag in here, like that. I think back in the last, when I was doing it over here, I wanted to tell you, it was capitals, right? I had capital H's. It still worked, but my caps lock was on, and I couldn't. I'm like, why are those capitals? Anyway, so that's the way you do H1 tags, and I'll say hello Python. Go back to our browser. I'm going to do a refresh. Look at that. So we have an actual HTML page now that we've built. So the other thing we can do is, I'm going to go to Bootstrap. I'm going to show you here if we want to style this a little bit nicer. We can go to examples. I think it's examples, or maybe over here 5.3. Yeah, no, it should be under examples. No, docs. This is what I'm looking for. So we want the whole dealio. So this here will work. It imports their JavaScript stuff and the theme. Everything's coming in. So I'm going to copy that, come back over here, and then I can replace this whole dealio here that we just created. And now let's make a hello Python. And refresh. This should look a little different here. There we go. You can see that text changed. So that's Bootstrap styling. All right, so now we know how to build a web page. The next step probably should be, well, usually we would, maybe add like a navigation bar and stuff. But we'll do that later on. I want to get down to the functionality here right away. So we need a form, right? We need a way for users to input stuff into the application. Now, we could just use HTML forms and that works, but I want to show you something that we can run in Flask, and it's called Flask WTF Forms. And it allows us to protect against cross-site request forgeries. And we can do reCAPTCHA. It comes kind of built in the package. So what we're going to do is go to the installation here. And we want to do this pip install dealio. So this is pip install dash, I guess it's for upgrading. So just run that. I suppose that should be good to go. And we'll stop our server. You can see it's running here on my end. It's just Control C to stop that. There we go. I'm going to clear and then paste in that. Oops. Close that. New terminal. Oh, I'm not pasting the right thing. That's why. Hold on. There we go. Okay. It looks like we're good to go. Some of the stuff is satisfied. All right. I'm just reading through here. Let me do a pip freeze on our requirements as well. I don't want to forget to do that. So I'm going to update our requirements text here with our new installations that we've run. So the command to do that is pip freeze. And if you just run pip freeze, for example, you can see what you've got installed in your environment here. So there you go. But if we do pip freeze greater than symbol and then requirements.text, it'll put everything in that requirements file. All right, guys, let's close that. Go over to our server file. And this is where we're going to start doing some imports. And again, this is all from the documentation, guys. So I just have some notes here on the side, but you can get all this stuff. You could copy and paste this if you wanted to right from their documentation. So up here, we're going to just do the old from Flask _ what the forms. We're going to import string field. And I think it's camel case like that. I'm just going to make sure. No, that's not what we want. We want, we need to import that in a second. We want Flask form and CSRF protect. Flask form and CSRF protect. Now we want to also do from WTF forms. We want to import. This is where we import the string field, and then we can import the submit. So that's going to allow us to have that box where the user can input text, but also a submit button. All right. Then what we want to do is we want to validate our form as well. So what the forms provides validator. So we can say from WTF forms dot. Is it validators? Yeah. validators import data required, and we'll do length too. We might as well, so comma and then length. All right, that's it for the imports. We want to come down here. We've got this secret key deal, or we've got this CSRF protect, but it requires some kind of secret key. So the way we can do this is say app.secret key, and then we can set that equal to some kind of string, right, of just gobbledygook for now. And we can put this later in a environment variable, like an environment file in ENV, and set it as a variable and then import it so it's secure. But for now, this will work. You can do whatever you want here. I just obviously made up a bunch of text. And then the next thing we want to do is do that CSRF and set that equal to CSRF protect is what we're getting from right here. And then what we want to pass into that is our app, which is defined right here. Okay, so we're passing in the app. And then this again is kind of similar to Django if you guys have used that before. If not, I'll try to explain. So we're going to build out a class here, and it's going to be for our form, right? And then what we can do is inside of our HTML template, we just import the form. So it's a little bit different than writing forms in HTML. It's, we're going to have the form fields here, and then import that form into our function, and then from there take that into the actual view. You'll see what's going on, but I wanted to kind of try to explain this to you. So if you're like, why are we building a form here when we're not using it here? It allows us to do that validation and everything right here. So this is how you set that up. So we're going to make a class, and we're going to set that to, this could be called anything you want. I'm going to call mine password checker form. Like that. We're going to put in some parentheses, and then what we want to pass in here is the Flask form, right? So this right here. So we can come down here and just put in Flask form. We're going to put our colon there, come downtown here, and then here we're going to have a field for the user, just basically two things, right? We're going to have a field where they enter the password and a submit button. So we can call this password field. You don't have to call it field, by the way. I'm just doing that, but you could call this, Jimmy if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter, but it's better to use something descriptive. And we're going to set that equals to, and this is where we get that string field, which we imported up above. So we want to say string field, like that. And then this takes in some arguments. And the first argument is going to be put in a pair of quotes, and then this is what it's going to output just as a hint to the user. So we can say here, enter a password to check. And then after that, the next argument is going to be validators, and that's going to be equal to data required, which we imported right here. Like I was saying to you, we don't have to do this, but we might as well. I'm just showing you some optional things. We could put in here a comma and say length. And then the arguments for that are the minimum requirement. So we'll put in 3 characters. And then you could also put in the maximum length of, say, 100 characters. I'm getting an error here because these are a list, guys. Sorry. So we're going to put square brackets around. It's a list. So we have to make it like so. So just square brackets around that. All right. That's cool. We're good there. The next thing we need to define is we need to set up our button. So we can just call that submit. You could call that button whatever you want. I'm going to call it submit. Set it equals to submit field, which we set up above. It takes in that text again of whatever we want the user to see. So we'll say submit, I guess. And that's pretty good. So we've got that all set up. All right, so we're back here at the WTF documentation. And what we're going to do here is we've already done this stuff, right? We've created our form. And then right here is the form that goes in our HTML. You can see how simple that is. It's, you know, an HTML form, right, with a tag, but these inputs are what we call with the Jinja syntax. So these curly braces denote the Jinja syntax that Flask uses and also Django. If we roll down here, validating forms, so you can see here on the route, they've got this get and post, right? These are the requests for the browser. So get simply means we're going to get information, but also we could post information. So we'll set that up, and then they call the form here and set it to a variable called form, and then they have this method here, which is part of the library, I assume. So this validate on submit, and then they redirect, and they have our template, right? And then they pass the form into the view, right? So this part here is the reason that they can call form in the view. Remember, I was saying this is actually in the HTML file. So that's how they get it over there, is with this setting here. So let's copy this. We're going to have to change it a little bit, right? Because our function is different and our form is called something different as well. So let's head back to the editor here and roll down, and I'm just going to set it up right in the index view. So instead of calling this whole hello world, I'm going to rename this to index. It just makes more sense. We could leave it hello world, but because our view is called index, it's nice to have everything set up that makes sense. So they've got a def submit. That's what they call their function. I shouldn't have copied that, but we can actually, so form in our case is called password checker form. So I'm going to switch that up to password checker form. And then we've got if form validate on submit. We want to return, and what they're doing is they're redirecting. Now this redirect is something that we would have to import up here. Redirect, right? And if we, I'm just showing you this, guys. So if you ever wanted to, so after the form is submitted, we could build another page called success, h.html, and then have the user brought there. And we could flash a message saying your form has been submitted, or you've signed in, or whatever it is, right? So, but our deal is we don't want to redirect them because we want to show them the data, right? We want to show them what they get back from the API. And if we redirect them because we're not using a database, we're going to lose that information. So as soon as that page refreshes, that information will be gone. So we're going to take that part out, and we'll just return our return. But we need to put this. Well, we need to leave that there because when the page loads originally, right, we want to show them the index. But then inside that if statement, we want to also return the same page. Okay, so we've got the form. If form.validate on submit, then down here what we can do is we can set up a variable here, and we can call this anything we want. I'll call it data. Form, let's call it form data. Form underscore data. And that's going to equal to request. We got to import this. And then what we want to do is the request.form, okay? And then we can actually call a method. If we put another dot in here, we'll say to_dict, like that. And that'll get us back a dictionary object of what was input into the form. And this request here, we have to import that as well. So I'm going to take the redirect out and just say request here. And that'll take care of that error. So we've got form data, request form to dict. And then what we can do is, for now, just to test things out, we can print that. Print, and then form data. So the next thing we need to do is over here is grab a form. But this is going to add that CSFR token that we have. So we'll go back, and then we're going to go to the index view, and then under Hello Python inside our body, we'll paste that in. And then this name field here is not going to work for us because we called it, what did we call it? Here it is. We called it password field, and our button is called submit. So let's go back here. So we're cool with this, with the input of submit, but this has to be password field here. And same over here. This is the actual input right here that we're editing now. And the first thing, as you can see, it's got the dot label. So it's that's being set up by this here, I guess. Let's see if we refresh our page. If I refresh now, form is not defined because form is not defined. Form equals, let's try to restart the server maybe. We also have to add in up here, guys, this part here, methods. So it's a list. So we'll put a comma here. Methods equals, and then we put in the square braces, and we're going to say quotations get, and then comma, quotations post. So the reason form's not defined is because we haven't passed it into our view yet, right? We have to put it in here, guys, into the parameters. So the index is calling this form, right? And it's like, I don't know what this is. So I just overlooked that. So let's, so what we're going to do here is we're going to say comma, and we're going to say form equals form. And we don't want quotes around that. We want quotes around that. So this is what is being called in the view. So if we called this my form, then in the HTML we would say my form. And then this part here is this here. Okay? So let's refresh now. Maybe we got to also we got to define it down here as well, guys, because we're getting the page here. So when the page originally loads, this is what's being called. When we submit the form, this line is being called. So we should be good now, I think. There we go. Let's try test. Submit, and nothing happens, but I want to show you that if we go into inspect, and we go network, I'm going to send that again, And then if I click on the URL and headers, payload, there you go. We got test and we got our CSFR token. So if I put in Steve, you can see we're getting that. So now to get that back, let's say to a database, if we had one, what we would do is simply come in here and, oh yeah, and also you can see that we're getting this information back. I'm just going to highlight it. So you can see each time I did those submits, we got that info. Okay, if we had a database to save this to, which we don't, but we want to definitely output it to the screen, right? So what we can do is, for example, I'm going to go over here, and outside of the form, we can just print out, put in some Jinja brackets, right? And say form underscore data, like that. Now, we do need to pass that in. So I'll do that, comma, form data equals form data. And if I run this again, you can see we're getting this printed out to the screen. Cool. Let's go back and we can take out this print statement here now. And we can come down here, and what we want to do is slice this, right? So because we don't want the CSFR token, we just want the password. What's it called again? Password field. Form data, and then grab it like this, put in a pair of quotes, and say password field. And then we could assign it, I suppose. We could say pass field equals that. And then if we wanted to just pass that in, we could come over here and say pass field equals pass field, and come back to our index. And then instead of passing in all that data, we can just say pass field. Let's run this again. And you can see we get Steve output there. All right. But now that we've got this part going on, our next step is going to be to actually, let me open this up in my Explorer. And I'm going to grab the Pwned functions from our last tutorial. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go into the Flask app, and I'm going to paste that right there. So let's go back here to the editor and open that up. Make sure I'm going to collapse everything. Make sure I'm editing the right one. So in Flask app, Pwned functions. What we need to do is, well, we don't want to call the function here, right? We want to just send information over. So I'm going to comment that out. You can delete it, but I'll just comment that out. And then here, the user input is going to be passed in as an argument, right? Again, I know you know, but this could be any name, but I might as well just call it user input. And then this input function, we don't need it, right? We're not going to be using the command line, right? So that should be good. What we want to do now, though, we've got that in that same folder as our Flask server, is go to the Flask server and then import that. So we'll say from dot pond function import the user get user input, just like that. And the dot just means the same folder. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but that's what that does. And then here, what we can do is, we got there, I'm going to call the function, so get user input, put in our parentheses, and then pass this in, this part here. So we could put this above. I'll just show you. I'm assuming most of you guys are new to Python. There's just a few ways we could do this, right? Basically, what we want to have getting into this is this information right here from form data. But now we could pass in that or this, right? We could pass in this pass field because it's been defined. So we'll just pass in the pass field like that. And then we don't actually need this second one anymore. And we don't really even need to have this here, right? We want to now get the result of the function, right? So let's just try this out though and see what we get going on here, guys. So I'm going to come back here. I've got Steve. I'm going to hit that. And we got an exception. Well, interpreter import error was raised. Where do I need to? Do you have to put the dot in here? I'm not. Maybe you don't have to in Flask. I don't know. Let's try that again. Yeah, that seemed to be the problem. Okay, so look, we're getting results back. Cool. All right, so the function is printing out results. Now we don't want to print out results, so let's go back over here and come down here and just comment out these print statements because we don't need them. And you could delete them, but I'm going to leave them in there just like that because we're returning this, right? So the file is returning. And then if we go back to our HTML, like our actual page here, let's run this. And we're not getting here now, which is expected, but we're also not printing anything, which is nice too. So let's go back to our main controller. Let's do this. This is what we need to return this. I'm going to call this result, and that's going to equal our function, okay? And then in our views here, we'll return the result. So we'll say result equals result. And then if we go to our index now and put in result, we should, there we go. Nice, huh? Let's put in something crazy and we get our good to go rock and roll. Nice, eh, guys? All right, so when we come back, what we're going to do is you can see here that this is staying in place, and we don't want that, right? Because we're not refreshing the page. We're not clearing the form because we're not redirecting. All right, guys, so when we enter a potential password here, so I'll enter, hello. If I run that, we get a response and everything, but this input is keeping the content because we're not reloading the page, right? So let's go over to our editor here and go to your index view, and then just come in here and set a value on this input. We can do something like this here, right? We can just put a comma in and say value equals, and we'll put in a pair of quotations, just blank, like that. So if we rerun this now, it should clear this out. Let's see. I might have to restart the server. Syntax error. Yeah, we got to put it inside the brackets, I think, like that. So move it in there. Let's try that out, guys. There we go. So I'll put in Frank, go. We get Frank appears, and our input is blank. We may also want to change this button up here too. So we can do that by coming down here. We don't have to put the comma in here, actually. We can just say class and then equals. We'll put in some quotations and we can do btn space btn info. For example, these are Bootstrap classes. And let's change this go to say submit or whatever you want. Let's go back to our page, do a little refresheroo. There we go. So we got a nicer looking button. Let's actually take a quick look at the Bootstrap documentation here, guys. And we'll come down to components, or layout. Here we go, layout, grid, containers, breakpoints, content, tables, forms. Here we go. Form control. So it looks like if we just add this to the class form control, we should be good to go. So I'm going to copy that and give this a shot. Go back here. So we've got input type, we've got class, and then I'm going to put a space and put form control. And then refresh our page and just see if we get any kind of difference. Yeah, so it made that huge, right? So we're getting somewhere with it. We can probably also do that to our input field here as well. So let's try that. Value, let's do class equals, we'll do a pair of quotes and say form hyphen control. And we'll go back, refresh, look at that. So you can see now that that input is a nice Bootstrap style, kind of glows when we click on it. And let's do Steve, and we get a response. So this is huge, right? But we can fix this, but at least now we know that we've got the ability to add Bootstrap classes to our form, and it's that easy. What if we wanted to customize this, though? We can do this dynamically using Jinja. So we haven't really explored that, but let's take a look at that right now. So we've got a result coming back here. The way that Jinja works is if we're going to write code that we don't necessarily want to display. So what I mean is if we want to display something, we simply put it in those double curly braces, right? And we put our variable in, like we're showing our result below. But if we want to do like an if statement, you do it with single curly braces and then the percent sign. So, and double like that. And then any code would appear inside. So we'll say if, and then let's check something out here. I'll show you what I want to do. So let's try Steve with a bunch of D's. Because I got that if in there, guys, I'm just going to get rid of that for a second. I'm going to try to get something out of this text. So in my case, I'm using this term rock and roll here, right? So I'm going to copy that just to show you, how we can change up what we see based on what gets returned. So a simple way to do that is to do curlies again with the percent. And then in here, we're going to say if, and then sometimes it's easier just to type it out than to try to copy and paste, right? So we're going to say if rock and roll in result, we want to do something. We're going to come down here. We're going to put in another pair of curlies with the percents. We're going to then say else. And then we want to actually end out our loop. We'll just say end. So if this is in there, we want to show some kind of maybe, well, we want to show the result. So I'm going to move that up there. And then we also want to show it here in the else. But up here we can do something like maybe some kind of danger text, or we'll get something from Bootstrap. So I'll just say danger text here, just to show us the difference. And then down here we'll do something like a green style, something like that. So let's run this again, and I'm going to submit that with Steve. I got to do end if. It's not exactly like Python, guys. Sorry, you got to do end if. My mistake. There we go. Let's go back. Steve. And then, see, we get green style. And then the password. Let's do a crazy password. And then danger. Okay, danger text. So I'm just demonstrating to you that you can filter what gets shown to the user. And what we'll do is we'll add some CSS or some Bootstrap styling. So this will appear maybe as in a green box, or in a red box if it's danger, and in a green box if it's good. We got that logic set up at least. So the next thing we can do is let's go over here to Bootstrap again, and let's take a look at a card. Or what else? Yeah, card's good. So they've got these cards. I'm trying to get something. Yeah, like this feature card here. So we can grab all this text. I could just come up here, copy, go back in here, and then I'm just going to go up here to the top and move all this stuff down, paste that in. I'm going to refresh our page here. So we get this featured in this box. And I think too we can add in here a container. So we'll say div, and inside the div we're going to say class equals container. And then we of course want to end our div outside of all this stuff here. So right here for now. We'll come back, refresh. Yeah, so it kind of moved everything over a little bit for us, which is nice. And then we can then take this code, our form and whatnot, And I'm going to cut it, come up here. So we've got the card title, card text. I'll put it in here. I can actually move that down like that. And then, yeah, that's fine. Actually, we can leave that like so. Let's just refresh the page and see what we get here now. Okay, not so bad. We can come up here and do if we'll get rid of this hello Python, refresh. We can get rid of this featured text up here. Not so bad, not so bad at all. Hey guys, so I'm over here at the Bootstrap site and I found these text areas basically that we can add, success or danger, the typical Bootstrap classes, right? So I've just added one here to the code. I'll show you. And I just did a little test div, right? I just copied what they had. I did a little test div there, and this is what it looks like. Well, I had this reverse. So if, in my case, if there's rock and roll in the result in the text, we want to actually do the green, not danger. So I had that reversed. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take this div. I'm going to cut it out of there, and I'm going to put it here in the old loop. So this is going to be the danger one, the else, and then this is going to be the successful one up here. So if it has rock and roll, for example, in my case, that's a good sign. So in that, I can add the class success there. Like so. And so if rock and roll, and then what I want to do, instead of test, I just want to put the result in there, right? So I'll cut that out of there, fire that right there. And I'll also do that here. All right, let's try this out. So I'm going to reload the page. So I'm going to fire in my crazy Steve with the D's, submit that, and there we go. We get the nice green. If I do just Steve, we get the red. And then we also get this down here. Let me see what's going on here. Because I'm still outputting the result. Now let's just reload this page and we still get the red. We can overcome this by adding another condition. So let's roll back to our code. And then in here, we can do, so we're saying, in my case, if the rock and roll is in the result, we want to do the success. Else, we want to do the danger. So when the page loads, it's loading danger because it's not finding rock and roll, right? So it's just going to show that. But we can also come in here and do an elif, right? So we'll do that right here and say elif and just put in not result. So elif not result, what do we want to do? We want to do nothing, right? We don't want to show anything there. And then else, to finish it off, we're going to do our danger. Stranger danger. All right, let's go back here. I'm just going to hit enter on the request. So now this is how the page should load. If I hit Steve, we get our red result. If I hit a stronger password, I get the green result. If I just navigate to the page, I get no result. Perfect. All right, guys, so the next part of this series is just going to be getting some different pages to display and showing you how to navigate around. And then we're going to actually take our Bootstrap and bring in the proper CSS instead of importing it over the wire like we're doing now. The first thing we're going to take a look at here is in our templates. Let's create a couple new files here. And I'm going to call one of them about.html. And then I'm going to call another one contact. And then inside of each of these, we'll just do put in an H1 tagger here. And this is contact. And the other one is about. Well, that was about. About. And contact. And we don't have any routes set up for these, so our Flask app doesn't know that these even exist right now. So we're going to go into our main Flask server py file, and we can, for right now, I'm going to show you another way to do this, but I'm just going to copy. Well, let me actually clean this up a little bit here. I'm just going to move this stuff up, and then what we want to do is just to make things faster, I'm going to grab this whole function here. I'm going to paste it. Let's paste it up here. And then we don't need this form stuff. So from the form and all the way downtown, we can delete all that and just leave the one return on the end. We can take out this form because there's no form, and we'll call this contact. And because we're not dealing with forms, we can remove this methods here. We can also come in here and change this index to say contact because we don't want to confuse Flask, right? Because we already have an index. And then we want to make a route here to go to contact, right? So if we enter this in our URL, it's going to go to this HTML file. So let's try this out. This actually should work right now. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to hit a slash and say contact. So we're going to copy this again and fire that here. And we'll make this about. And we'll make this about. And we'll make this about. All right. Now, if we refresh this page, we get about. I want to show you something, though, that's kind of cool, right? Because we're repeating ourselves a lot here. It's not cool. So, we want to keep our code, they call it dry, don't repeat yourself. So we've got these two views that are really right now just static pages. They're not, there's no forms, we're not outputting any data to them. So what we could do is I'm going to comment out this one here. And we can actually make this dynamic. So over here at the Flask documentation, they show you how we could do this. So they've got a few different ways we could set this up. If you had a user ID coming back from a database, you could do that. So let's head back over. And in our new route here, we can add in angle brackets. And then I think you would just do string colon and then path. And then come down here, path. And then instead of about, we don't need any quotes, so we'll say path. Like that. Let's go back to our website here. And if we go to the home route, we get our password checker, which is nice. If we go to contact.html, we get contact. And if we go to about, we get about. So it seems to all be working. And we only have, for these two other routes, we only have one function to worry about. So just a nice way to keep things more tidy. All right, guys, so back here in our main file, the Flask server file, I'm going to change the name of this. Instead of about, we call it something like pages, something generic like that, because this represents 2 pages, so it makes sense to me. And then I want to show you here how we can link off to something. And then what we're going to do is add a navigation bar here in a second, but I'll just show you here. So if I go to our contact, in here we're going to add an A tag, it's just HTML. The only real difference is we're going to go to our about page, so I'll put that in now. Just the text for the link. But in our href, we're going to add in the Jinja, right? So we're going to do the double curlies on each side. And the convention in Flask is to say URL underscore for. We're going to put in some parentheses. And the arguments that get passed in here are the name of the function, which is, in this case, we put in quotes and we say pages. That's what we called it. Outside of the quotes, we put in a comma and we say path equals, and then whatever the file is that we want to link to. And in our case, so we'll put in single quotes here, and that page is called about.html. We gotta add that. And that's it. So there's a link in Flask. So let's go to our actual browser here. I'm going to go over to the contact page, and there's our link. Click it, and it brings us to about. So this brings me to something else that I want to show you. So there's this site called Bootswatch, and I'm going to select this template here, but it's all built in the latest, greatest Bootstrap. They're all free, these templates, and they've got a ton of them in here, right? So if you want to set something up quickly, you can click through these guys. I left the link for this in the GitHub README, but I'm going to use this one. So I'm going to grab the bootstrap.css for this, download it. Back in my editor here, what we got to do is in our Flask app, so in that folder, we got to create a folder called static. And this is how Flask works. It's expecting this static folder. Inside here, we want to add that Bootstrap file. So I'm going to actually reveal an Explorer. So reveal an Explorer. And then what I want to do is downloads, grab that. Go back. Go into static. There we go. I'm going to rename this. Actually, I'll do it in here. So if I open that, I can say rename, and I want to have it called quartz.css. So we've got the static folder. The next thing we want to do is inside of our templates folder, let's create another HTML file here. New file, and it's called base. And again, this is kind of a Flask convention, so we'll say HTML. And inside of here, what we want to do, let's grab the stuff from our index. So I'm going to grab all this stuff here from index, go back to base, paste it in, and then we don't want the card. We don't want any of this stuff, actually. We want just the closing div for the container, like that. And then what we want to do first is, let's remove this, leave the quotes there, and then do our Jinja. So just like before, we're going to do URL _4 parentheses. And here what we want to do is say static inside single quotes, comma. So here instead of saying path, what we do is we say file name. And that equals to single quotes, and then that file was called, in my case, quartz.css, like so. Now, how do we use this file? So what we want to do is the percent symbols, and then this is going to be block space content, and then down below we can simply do the same thing and block, like that. Let's go over to our contact page. So we've got this pretty much set up right now. So to use this, what you do is you come in here, and of course we're going to be doing the old Jinja again. And what we want to say here is extends space, a pair of quotes, and then say base.html. And then down here, our content, we want to do the same thing we did here. So block content and block. So I'm just going to copy that, come back here, paste that in, and then take our content and cut it and then move it in here. Let's go to our website, make sure your server's running, refresh the page. Was that about or contact? So let's go to contact. Okay, cool. So it's a little bit different, right? You can see the styling here is a little bit different. Now, how we're really going to see this is, let's go back to Bootswatch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of these colorful, crazy nav bars. I'm going to go back to our about file, and above the H1, just for now, I'm going to remove this after here, guys. I just want to paste that in. So we've got a crazy nav bar. Let's go back here. Let me refresh. And it's not loading. Well, I'm not sure. Let me go back here and go to our base. That's good. Probably because of this integrity deal here. Let's take all this out. So this anonymous, the cross origin, and the integrity, and just leave the style sheet reference there. So it looks like that. And let's try again here to restart our server, guys. And go back and do a refresh. There we go. Cool. So that's not looking great. But anyway, we can see that it's working. What I mean is that it's inside this container, so it's kind of a weird look here. It's over too far. So what I'm going to do, though, is go to that nav bar that we have here, and I'm going to just cut it out of here. We don't want it there. I just put it there for a test. So I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to show you how we include that. So In our templates folder, we're going to make another new file. We'll call this navigation.html, and then paste in the navigation. Now what we can do is go to our base, and then outside of the container and below the body tag, we're going to do our Jinja again, and percentage, and we're going to say include and then space, quotations, and then navigation .html. And now if we go back here and refresh, there we go. So it's looking a lot better now. Not too shabby, that's for sure, guys. All right, so we're really on the home stretch here. This is the contact page, which we just set up. If we go to the About page, though, you'll see we get our old styling. And if we go to the home page, where we enter our passwords and stuff, you can see that that's still looking the same as well. We don't have any navigation either on those pages. So this is really easy now. So now kind of get the idea that by setting up that base file and that navigation file, we only have to do edits in one place, right? We don't have to go through each page now and edit all these links. We can do it in one file, and that's going to be global. But we do have to set this up in those other templates. So let's go back into our editor. So just take a little bit here to get done. And then what we want to do is do the same thing. So I'm just going to copy this from the contact. I'm going to go to the index first. We might as well take care of that. And then in here, we can delete from the body tag all the way up. Come down here, we have this div container, and we can delete the HTML tag and the body tag, and I think, and also the script tag as well here, guys. I think we need these other ones here. I think we're, yeah. So we can then, actually we don't need the container either in here because we've got that in our base HTML. So we delete those tags, the opening and closing. We'll just leave the card in here. So I'm going to paste in this and then take this out and take the end block, cut it, come down here and paste it in. And then if we go back here, we'll go to our index. We don't actually have a link yet, but we'll just go there and check it out. We got our nav bar and our form. We're all good to go there. So next step is the about. So we'll leave that about tag there. I'm going to paste in the end block and the opening, that, and then move the about right there. And then let's go back, go to about, just to check it. So, and there we go. All right, so now let's fix up this nav bar a little bit. So we can go into that file. And what we can do here is for the text, logo text, I guess you'd call it, nav bar brand, we're going to do, of course, our Jinja. And we're going to do the old URL _for parentheses, quotes, and then this function is called index, and the path equals index.html. Like so. Make sure you save it. We'll head back over there. So we're on the About page. If we click this now, let's see here. There we go. It brings us to the index page. So I'm just going to go back to About. You could change that text as well. I'm going to call this Pwned Python. And then down here we have a drop down. We've got pricing. So we'll do current link here, li. I'm just going to take that out. And then I'm going to do about. And contact. And then, of course, we're going to do Jinja. And this is going to go to URL for, this is called pages, if I remember, comma, and this is going to go to the, make sure that's a comma, this is going to go to the about.html, and I'm just going to copy this and fire that in down here. And this is going to be contact. Let's save. So we'll refresh first. Why 3 were given. URL 4 pages contact.html. We got to put path in here. I forgot that part. I'm used to Django, guys. I keep saying that, I know, but it's a little bit different. It's very similar. It's almost identical to do this in, but you have to actually put that path equals. There we go. That should do the trick now. There we go. All right, so Pwned Python, about, contact, and then we've got our about link there as well. That's fine. And then these other things, if you want to delete them, you can. Oh, they have an about too. So we'll delete their about. So this li here. Let's get rid of that. And then there's the drop down. We can get rid of that too. Why not? So li to li. Make sure. And then refresh. And there we go. So contact, about, Pwned and Python. Let's try a password. I'll say Steve, submit. I'll say Steve, DDDDD, rock and roll. Everything's good. We load the page. We got nothing going on. There you go, guys. Now, the only other thing we could do here, I'm not going to worry about it, I'll just show you, is we never imported our JavaScript. We're just getting it from the CDN. You could come over here and download it. So if you go to download, you can grab the source files for Bootstrap, and let's see here. And then you would just import it the same way we did the CSS. So it would be file name or file or whatever. Let me see here. I feel bad now. We'll go to the base.html, and it would just be like this. except you would do it here. Same exact idea. So you would just place that file in your static folder and then import it that way. This works for me. All right, guys, thanks so much.